"Let the servant fall where everyone can see her." The words slipped through the music of the Moon Festival just before Clara Whitmore hit the white stone courtyard, and for one breath, even the silver bells seemed to forget how to ring. Moon candles scattered from her tray, rolling across the polished ground like tiny fallen stars. Warm wax splashed over her fingers. Her old cream servant dress twisted beneath her knees. Her pale gray apron caught on the edge of the tray, and her worn brown leather shoes scraped against stone that had been washed clean for noble feet, not hers. Around her, Moonhall Pack stood beneath lanterns, silk banners, and a full white moon, dressed in silver gowns, black coats, pearl pins, and family crests that had never known hunger. Clara heard the first laugh before she lifted her head, then another, then the soft, cruel ripple of people choosing comfort over kindness. Lady Vanessa Hale stood a few feet away in a blue-white festival gown, her gloved hand still raised as if the push had been part of the ceremony. "Careful," Vanessa said sweetly, loud enough for the nearest families to hear. "A servant Omega should remember where she belongs." Clara pressed one wax-stained hand against the ground and tried to rise, but the tray had bent beneath her weight, and the candles kept rolling toward the royal path, the narrow strip of moonlit stone reserved for honored daughters, council elders, and the visiting king from the north. "Pick them up," someone whispered, "before she stains the path." Clara's throat tightened. She had polished those stones before sunrise. She had trimmed every wick in the candle hall until her fingers smelled of beeswax and smoke. She had carried soup to old Mrs. Rowe, pinned Mara Ellison's torn sleeve, and checked the moon lantern 3 times because the whole pack believed its flame carried prayers to the sky. Yet now, under the moon she had helped prepare, she was only a servant on her knees. She gathered the first candle, then the second, refusing to look at the crowd long enough for them to see how deeply the laughter landed. "I am sorry," she said, though she was not sure which part of her life she was apologizing for anymore. Vanessa stepped closer, her silver slippers stopping just before Clara's hand. "Do not touch the royal path." Clara froze. The last candle rested inches beyond the boundary, glowing white against the stone. If she reached for it, they would accuse her of disrespect. If she left it there, they would accuse her of ruining the procession. The festival drums changed then, low and steady, rolling through the courtyard like thunder under snow. The northern gates opened. Black and silver banners entered first, followed by royal guards in dark cloaks. Then King Adrian Blackthorn rode into Moon Hall beneath the full moon, tall in black and silver armor, his wolf fur cloak falling heavy over his shoulders, his silver eyes cold enough to quiet every whisper without a word. The crowd bowed. Vanessa smiled as if the night belonged to her. But the king did not look at the lanterns, the nobles, or the waiting platform. His gaze moved past all of it and stopped on Clara, still kneeling among fallen candles, one hand hovering over a line she had been forbidden to cross. King Adrian Blackthorn did not move at first, and somehow that stillness carried more weight than any command. Clara felt it before she understood it, the sudden change in the courtyard, the way laughter thinned into nervous breathing, the way silk skirts stopped whispering against stone. She kept her hand above the fallen candle, caught between obedience and humiliation, while the moonlight drew a bright line across her knuckles. All her life, lines had been drawn for her. The kitchen door, the servant stair, the back row during prayers, the corner table where Omegas without family names ate after everyone else had finished. Moonhall Pack had taught her that some people were born to stand beneath lanterns, and others were born to trim them from the shadows. Clara had never argued with shadows. She had lived in them with a broom in one hand and a basket of folded linens in the other, waking before dawn to stir oatmeal for the kitchen boys, carrying clean bandages to old Mrs. Rowe when winter stiffened her hands, saving the softest heel of bread for Mara Ellison when the younger servant cried from homesickness. By sunset, Clara usually smelled of candle smoke, warm bread, and rainwater from the laundry yard. No noble daughter ever asked who kept their silver lanterns polished, who replaced the cracked wicks, who checked that the moon lantern did not lean too close to the curtain ropes. They only saw the clean glow and believed beauty had arranged itself for them. Tonight was supposed to be different only because the King of the North had come. The whole pack had spent 3 days preparing for his arrival. Clara had scrubbed the ceremonial steps until her knees ached, washed 50 yards of festival cloth in cold water, and counted 100 moon candles under Lord Edmund Vale's sharp gaze. She remembered the list because he had made her read it back twice, his finger tapping the parchment beside the royal path assignment that should never have carried her name. Servant Omegas did not cross that space. Clara knew it. Everyone knew it. Yet when she had asked why she was assigned to carry candles there, Lord Edmund had smiled without warmth and told her obedience was cleaner than curiosity. Now, kneeling before the entire courtyard, Clara understood the shape of the trap too late. Lady Vanessa's voice floated above her again. Your Majesty, forgive the disturbance. Some servants become confused when allowed too close to ceremony. A few nobles lowered their eyes, not from shame, but from fear of choosing the wrong side too soon. Clara pulled her hand back from the candle. She would not give them a second accusation. She would not touch the royal path, even if they called her careless for leaving wax there. But then a small movement near the candle hall caught her eye. Mara stood by the archway, pale and shaking, holding a lantern pole almost taller than herself. The wind had begun to turn. The moon lantern flame flickered once, then again, bending toward the hanging festival cloth. Clara forgot the crowd. She forgot Vanessa. She forgot the king watching from his horse. She pushed herself up, stepped away from the forbidden line, and hurried toward Mara with wax still cooling on her fingers. Lower the pole, Clara said gently, though her own voice trembled. Slowly. I have you. Mara obeyed, eyes wide with panic. Clara steadied the lantern with both hands, turned the flame away from the cloth, and shielded it with her sleeve until it burned straight again. Only when the danger passed did she realize the courtyard had gone completely silent. She stood beneath the moon with wax on her skin, dust on her dress, and no defense prepared. King Adrian dismounted. His boots touched the white stone, and every noble in Moon Hall seemed to hold their breath. King Adrian's first step onto the courtyard sounded quiet, but Clara felt it through the stone, as if the whole festival had shifted beneath her worn brown shoes. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He moved past the bowed nobles, past the silver banners, past Lady Vanessa Hale's careful smile, and stopped several feet from Clara, where the light of the moon lantern rested between them. Clara lowered her eyes because servants were trained to make themselves smaller when power came near. Yet everything in her wanted to look up. She had expected judgment. She had expected the cold glance of a king annoyed by a ruined ceremony. Instead, the silence around him felt watchful, exact, almost protective. Lady Vanessa stepped forward before anyone else could speak. Your Majesty, I apologize for this embarrassment. The servant was given a simple duty and allowed pride to carry her beyond her place. Lord Edmund Vale hurried from the ritual platform, his ceremonial robes sweeping over the stone, his face arranged into concern that never reached his eyes. The festival will continue at once, Your Majesty. I will have the Omega removed from sight. Removed from sight. The phrase struck Clara harder than the laughter had. How easily they said it. As if she were spilled wax, crooked cloth, a candle burned too low. She clasped her hands in front of her apron so no one would see them shake. Mara still stood behind her with the lantern pole clutched close, tears bright in her eyes. Clara wanted to tell the girl not to cry. Not here, not where noble families treated tears like proof of weakness. But Adrian's gaze moved first to Mara, then to the steadied moon lantern, then to Clara's wax-marked sleeve. She prevented the flame from reaching the festival cloth, he said. His voice was low, but every person in Moonhall heard it. Lord Edmund's mouth tightened. A fortunate accident after an improper disruption. Clara breathed in, slow and careful. Moonflower garlands trembled above the courtyard. Candle smoke drifted across the white stone. Beneath it all came another scent, cold cedar rain and northern snow, carried by the king's cloak. It should have made the night feel harsher. Instead, it made the air feel clean. Vanessa gave a light laugh that did not reach the people around her. Servants are often dramatic when they wish to be noticed. Clara finally lifted her head. The words should have lowered her. They had lowered her before, in kitchens, in hallways, in rooms where noble daughters snapped their fingers instead of saying her name. But this time, with the moon lantern still burning because she had steadied it, something in her refused to bend. I did not wish to be noticed, Clara said softly. The crowd stirred. Servants were not supposed to answer. Omega's servants were not supposed to answer noble daughters. I only wish the lantern to stay lit. Vanessa's smile sharpened. And yet you were on the royal path. Clara looked toward the fallen candle, still resting near the forbidden line. I was assigned there. Lord Edmund turned too quickly. Impossible. No one would assign a servant Omega to the royal path. Adrian's eyes shifted to him, silver and cold. Then someone used her obedience as a trap. The words fell cleanly into the courtyard. Lord Edmund went still. Vanessa's expression flickered, so fast most would have missed it. Clara did not miss it. She had spent years reading faces before orders were spoken. Adrian noticed her noticing. He did not touch her. He did not step close enough to make the crowd imagine possession where there was only attention. What is your name, he asked. Not what are you. Not who owns your labor. Not which servant failed. Clara swallowed, and for the first time that night, her voice did not break. Clara Whitmore. Adrian held the name in the silence, as if returning it to the place where the laughter had tried to bury it. Clara Whitmore, he repeated. Then he turned to the ritual platform. Bring me the duty list. The order to bring the duty list moved through Moon Hall like a cold wind finding every loose door. No one laughed now. The music had faded into a thin silver hush, and the moon lantern burned above the courtyard with the steady flame Clara had saved while the people who mocked her tried to decide how much they had seen. Lord Edmund Vale bowed too quickly. Of course, Your Majesty. The records are kept in the ritual chamber. There is no need to delay the festival over a servant's confusion. King Adrian did not look away from him. Then the records will clear her. The answer was so simple that no one could argue without revealing fear. Clara stood beside the lantern pole, wax drying on her sleeve, her old cream dress marked with dust from the white stone. She wanted to step back into the servant line, to disappear behind the candle bearers and let the powerful people speak about her as if she were not there. But Adrian had said her name before the entire pack. Clara Whitmore. The sound still trembled inside her, not as pride, but as proof that she had not imagined herself into being. Mara Ellison reached for Clara's hand, then stopped, afraid of drawing attention. Clara saw the fear and gently touched the younger servant's wrist. Breathe, she whispered. Stand where the light can find you. Mara nodded, tears caught in her lashes. Lady Vanessa watched the small exchange with a tight smile. How touching, she said. The kitchen girls comfort each other after ruining a royal welcome. Clara lowered her hand, but did not lower her head. The old habit tried to pull her down. The years of yes, my lady, and forgive me, my lady, and I will clean it before anyone notices. But another memory rose with it. Mrs. Rowe's hands shaking over the candle ledger. Mara crying into a flour sack after Vanessa called her useless. Thomas Reed slipping extra oats to a hungry stable boy because the noble horses ate better than the servants. Clara had spent years making broken things look whole for people who never asked who had been cut by the edges. Not tonight. Lord Edmund returned with a narrow leather-bound ledger held carefully against his chest. Behind him came two attendants, pale and silent. Adrian extended one gloved hand. Open it. Edmund hesitated. Your Majesty, these lists are ceremonial. Moonhall custom requires that only the ritual master handle them during the festival. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Crown law requires truth before custom. The words struck the courtyard harder than a bell. Edmund opened the ledger. Adrian did not take it from him. He made Edmund hold it where everyone could see. Read the royal path assignments. Edmund's throat moved. Lady Vanessa Hale. Lady Miriam Cross. Lady Eliza Warren. Clara, his voice faltered. Clara felt the crowd turn. Vanessa's face became smooth as painted porcelain. Adrian stepped closer to the ledger, not to Clara. Finish the name. Edmund forced the words out. Clara Whitmore. A whisper broke across the noble families. Clara heard one woman say impossible. Another said mistake. But she remembered Edmund's finger tapping the parchment that morning, his smile, when he told her obedience was cleaner than curiosity. Adrian looked at Clara. Were you told this assignment before the ceremony? Yes, Your Majesty. Her voice was quiet, but clear. I asked if it was correct. And the answer? Clara looked at Edmund. Lord Vale told me to obey. Vanessa laughed softly, though the sound had lost its music. A servant may misunderstand instructions. From the edge of the candle hall, old Mrs. Rowe stepped forward with a small ring of keys clutched in both hands. Her gray hair was pinned poorly, as if she had dressed in a hurry, and her voice shook from age, not fear. She did not misunderstand. Every eye moved to her. Clara's heart tightened. Mrs. Rowe should have been sitting near the warm wall, resting her sore joints, not stepping into the path of noble anger. But the old woman lifted her chin. I keep the candle hall keys. Clara checked the moon lantern before sundown. She asked me why her name was on the royal path. I told her I thought it was strange. Adrian turned fully toward her. And did anyone else handle the list? Mrs. Rowe looked at Lord Edmund, then at Vanessa. The ritual master brought Lady Vanessa into the candle hall before the gates opened. After they left, the silver bowl was missing from the east table. The courtyard went still again, but this stillness had teeth. Vanessa's smile vanished. Edmund closed the ledger too fast. Adrian's hand came down on the cover, stopping it with calm authority. Open it again, he said. We are not finished with the moon's light yet. Adrian's command left the ledger open beneath the moonlight, and Lord Edmundvale seemed smaller with every page that turned. Clara watched his fingers slide over the parchment, careful now, too careful, as if neat handwriting could hide a crooked truth. Around them, the festival remained frozen in place. Noble families stood with half-finished smiles. Servants lined the edges of the courtyard with trays still in their hands. The moon lantern burned above them, steady and bright, its silver flame touching Clara's wax-marked sleeve like a quiet witness. Lady Vanessa lifted her chin. This is absurd. A missing bowl and a servant's confusion should not interrupt a royal ceremony. Adrian looked at her then, fully, and the courtyard seemed to grow colder. A ceremony that depends on silence is not sacred. Vanessa's face tightened. Clara felt the words settle somewhere deep inside her. For years, silence had been the price of keeping her place. Silence when extra work was pushed into her hands. Silence when noble daughters used her name only to blame her. Silence when Mara cried in the laundry yard and Clara could offer bread but not justice. Tonight, silence had been expected from her again, polished and obedient, like another silver bowl on the ritual table. But the flame still lived because she had moved when everyone else watched. Thomas Reed stepped from the stable archway, cap in hand, shoulders stiff beneath his work coat. Your Majesty, he said, voice rough with nerves. I saw the hail carriage near the east gate before the festival opened. It was not carrying guests. Vanessa snapped toward him. A stable hand has no place in ritual matters. Thomas swallowed, but he did not step back. No, my lady, but I know when a carriage rides heavy. A murmur traveled through the courtyard. Adrian turned to one of his northern guards. Seal the east gate records and bring the offering inventory. The guard bowed and left at once. Lord Edmund closed his eyes for the briefest second. Clara saw it, and so did Adrian. Mara moved closer to Clara, her small lantern pole lowered safely now. You helped me, Mara whispered. When the oil slipped, you helped me before anyone asked. Clara shook her head slightly, but the younger servant spoke louder, trembling yet clear. She always does. She checks the flames. She saves bread. She walks old Mrs. Rowe back to her room when the stairs are cold. She did not come here to ruin anything. Clara's chest tightened so sharply she almost forgot how to breathe. No one had ever defended her before the full pack. Not like this. Not where nobles could hear. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Enough sentimental nonsense. She stepped closer, not touching Clara this time, but using her voice like a polished blade. You are a servant Omega. You carry trays. You clean wax. You do not stand in judgment of families who built this hall. Clara looked at the white stone beneath her feet, then at the moon lantern above. Her hands were still stained, her dress still dusty, her place still uncertain. But the shame Vanessa wanted from her would not rise. I served this festival, Clara said, her voice soft but no longer small. I did not shame it. The words returned from earlier, stronger now, held by every servant who had ever lowered their eyes to survive. Adrian heard them. Something changed in his expression, not warmth exactly, but recognition. The air between them shifted with moonflower, warm bread, candle smoke, and rain on cedar wood. Clara felt it like a silver thread drawn through the cold night, strange and gentle, asking nothing from her. Adrian did not reach for it. He did not reach for her. He only turned back to the crowd. Then let truth stand where rank has stood too long. At that moment, the Northern Guard returned with a sealed inventory box and a pale council clerk. The clerk opened the record with shaking hands. The moon offerings listed for tonight, he said, do not match what remains in the East Chamber. Vanessa went still. Edmund's ledger slipped slightly in his grip. Clara looked up at the lantern she had kept burning, and for the first time, the light did not feel borrowed. The clerk's words did not become a roar at first. They became something quieter and more dangerous, a shared breath pulled through the teeth of Moonhall Pack. The moon offerings did not match the record. The sentence moved from noble to noble, servant to servant, until even the silver bells above the courtyard seemed to tremble with it. Clara stood beneath the moon lantern, her wax-stained hands folded against her pale gray apron, feeling the night rearrange itself around a truth that had always been there, hidden behind polished ceremony. Lady Vanessa Hale recovered first. She always did. Her face smoothed, her chin lifted, and her voice came out cool enough to pretend she had not heard the inventory at all. Then someone in the servant wing mishandled the offerings. That is exactly why discipline must remain where it belongs. Clara felt Mara flinch beside her. Old Mrs. Rowe lowered her eyes, not from guilt, but from the old fear of powerful families naming the nearest weak person as the nearest answer. King Adrian Blackthorne did not look at the servant line. He looked at the sealed inventory box. Read the missing items. The council clerk swallowed. 3 silver moon cups, 6 pearl thread prayer ribbons, 1 ceremonial bowl from the east table, 2 bundles of white cedar incense, and 4 packets of moonflower oil reserved for the royal welcome. A murmur passed through the crowd. These were not things a kitchen servant could slip into an apron pocket or lose between trays. These were offering pieces carried in locked cases, signed out by ranked hands. Adrian turned to Lord Edmund Vale, who held the East Chamber key. Edmund's mouth opened, then closed. Mrs. Rowe lifted her small ring of Candle Hall keys. Not me, Your Majesty. Candle Hall only. Thomas Reed raised his cap slightly. The East Chamber key was with Lord Vale this morning. I saw him give it to Lady Vanessa near the carriage arch. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. Stable hands see mud and horses, not ceremony. Mud remembers tracks, Adrian said coldly, and records remember hands. Clara looked at him then, really looked, and the silver thread in the air drew tighter, not around her body, not like a chain, but around the truth between them. Moonflower, warm bread, candle smoke, cedar rain. It was impossible and gentle at once, like the night had found a hidden note in her heart and answered it with a bell only they could hear. Adrian felt it too. She saw the smallest change in his breathing, the way his hands stilled near the edge of his cloak. Every alpha instinct in the stories would have stepped forward, claimed, commanded, made the moment about possession. Adrian did none of that. He turned his body slightly, placing himself between Clara and the crowd without closing the space she still owned. Then he looked at her with a restraint that felt more respectful than any bow she had ever received. Clara Whitmore, he said, and her name no longer sounded like something borrowed from the servant records. Do you wish to stand here while this is read, or would you prefer to step aside under crown protection? The question nearly broke her, not because it was grand, but because it was simple. Choice, offered in public, offered by a king. Clara glanced at Mara, at Mrs. Rowe, at Thomas, at the servants who had watched her kneel and now watched her breathe. I will stand, she said. If the truth is about me, I should not have to hear it from a corner. Adrian's eyes held hers for one steady second. Then stand in the light. He faced the clerk again. Continue. The clerk turned the next page. His voice shook harder now. The East Chamber inventory was changed 2 hours before the royal procession. The alteration bears Lord Edmund Vale's seal. Edmund went pale beneath the lantern glow. Vanessa took 1 step back, and this time, every noble saw it. Clara remained still, but inside her, something long buried lifted its head. The moon had not chosen the highest family. It had found the servant who kept the flame alive. Lord Edmund Vale's seal sat on the altered inventory page like a dark stone dropped into clear water, and every ripple reached someone who had laughed at Clara. The council clerk held the record with both hands, afraid to lift his eyes. Lord Edmund tried to speak, but no sentence formed cleanly. Lady Vanessa Hale looked toward the noble families as if one of them might step forward and rescue the old shape of the night, the shape where servants lowered their heads and rank explained every cruelty. No one moved. King Adrian Blackthorne took the ledger from the clerk at last, not because he needed to read what had already been spoken, but because the proof now belonged under Crown authority. The Moon Festival is suspended until every offering, duty list, and key record is reviewed, he said. Gasps broke across the courtyard, but his voice remained calm. No servant will be questioned without witness. No Omega will be blamed because accusation is convenient. Clara felt the words enter the servant line like warmth entering cold hands. Mara stood a little taller. Mrs. Rowe pressed her keys to her chest and closed her eyes. Thomas Reed lowered his cap, not in fear this time, but in relief. Vanessa's smile returned in a thinner, sharper form. Your Majesty, surely you do not intend to let one servant's performance dishonor Moon Hall before the North. Adrian turned to her. She has not dishonored Moon Hall. The silence after that was deep enough for candle smoke to drift through it slowly. Clara looked down at her hands. The wax had hardened in pale streaks along her fingers, proof of the flame she had protected when everyone else had protected appearances. Then what is she? Vanessa asked, each word polished cold. Adrian did not answer immediately. He looked at Clara first, and the unseen silver thread between them rang again, soft as a bell beneath snow. Moonflower, warm bread, cedar rain, and candle smoke moved through the courtyard, impossible to explain yet impossible for him to deny. Clara saw recognition in his eyes, but she also saw restraint. He did not let destiny become a command. He stepped toward her and stopped at a respectful distance, close enough to offer help, far enough to leave her choice untouched. Then he extended his hand, palm open beneath the moonlight. May I help you stand on the royal path, Clara Whitmore? The entire courtyard seemed to forget how to breathe. Clara stared at his hand. All evening, hands had meant orders. Vanessa's hand pushing her into shame. Edmund's hand changing ink on a list. Servants' hands gripping trays because fear had taught them not to reach for anything else. This hand asked. It waited. It did not close around her future before she could decide whether to step toward it. Clara lifted her gaze to the royal path, the line she had been forbidden to touch, then to the moon lantern she had kept alive. Her heart trembled, not with weakness, but with the terror of being seen after years of surviving unseen. Slowly, she placed her wax-marked hand in the king's gloved one. Adrian's grip was steady and gentle. He did not pull her like a prize. He gave her balance as she stepped onto the moonlit stone by her own strength. A sound passed through the crowd, not applause, not outrage, but the breaking of an old belief. Adrian kept her hand only as long as she needed to stand, then released it before anyone could mistake protection for ownership. She is Clara Whitmore, he said to Moonhall, servant of this hall, keeper of the flame tonight, a witness under crown protection. He paused, and his silver eyes swept over Vanessa, Edmund, and every silent noble who had chosen comfort over truth. And no title in this courtyard stands higher than her right to be treated as human. Clara stood beside him beneath the moon lantern, no longer behind the trays, no longer on her knees, while the pack that had pushed her down learned what it meant for a king to take her hand. The royal path did not look wider after Clara stepped onto it, yet the whole courtyard seemed changed by the small space her worn shoes now occupied. Moonlight touched the dust on her dress, the hardened wax on her fingers, the pale gray apron tied over a life of service no noble had ever thanked. King Adrian Blackthorne stood beside her, not close enough to claim her, not far enough to let Moonhall pretend she stood alone. The ledger rested in his gloved hand, and every page looked heavier than silver. Bring the offering records, the key register, and the carriage gate log, he ordered. Northern guards moved at once. Lord Edmund Vale bowed with the stiff obedience of a man watching his own walls crack. Lady Vanessa Hale remained still, but Clara could see the panic beneath her perfect posture, the way her fingers pressed into the blue-white silk of her gown. This is becoming excessive, Vanessa said. Moonhall has honored the crown for generations. Adrian's gaze stayed on the records being carried toward him. Then Moonhall should survive the truth. The first box opened beneath the moon lantern. Inside were folded inventories, wax seals, ribbons, and key slips dated for the festival week. A council clerk read carefully, while a second clerk copied each word under crown witness. The East Chamber key had been signed out by Lord Edmund 2 hours before the royal procession. The offering inventory had been altered within the same hour. The gate log showed the Hale carriage leaving through the east arch with extra weight marked as ceremonial storage. Thomas Reed stepped forward again, cap clenched in his hands. The wheels sank deep in dry gravel. Your Majesty, that carriage was loaded. Vanessa turned on him. You expect a king to believe a stable hand over a noble daughter? Clara felt the old fear move through the servant line, but it no longer ruled every breath. Mara stood beside Mrs. Rowe now, holding the lantern pole straight, her chin trembling but lifted. Adrian looked at Vanessa with a calm so cold it silenced even the banners. I expect records, witnesses, and conduct to matter more than rank. The second box was opened. Inside lay the missing silver ceremonial bowl, wrapped in white cloth stamped with the Hale family crest. No one gasped loudly this time. Shock had become understanding. Understanding had become shame. Lord Edmund's face lost all color. Vanessa's lips parted, but for once, her words arrived late. Clara stared at the bowl and felt no triumph. Only a tired ache. They had not merely pushed her because she was in the way. They had placed her in the way so the crowd would look at her while another truth passed behind them. She was meant to carry the blame, Mrs. Rowe whispered, and her old voice broke on the last word. Clara reached back and touched her hand, a quiet answer without turning from the light. Adrian closed the ledger. Lady Vanessa Hale and Lord Edmund Vale will remain under Crown questioning. Their family records, festival accounts, and offering transfers are sealed until review is complete. Vanessa's eyes flew to Clara, sharp with disbelief that a servant's name could stand where her family name had always stood higher. Clara met her gaze, not with anger loud enough to burn, but with a steadiness Vanessa had never expected from someone she had ordered to kneel. Adrian turned to the servants gathered along the edge. Every servant assigned to this festival will give testimony with protection. No dismissal, no punishment, no changed wage, and no removal from housing without Crown approval. A sound moved through them then, small and shaken, like people remembering they had lungs. Clara felt the silver thread between herself and Adrian again, gentle as moonlight on still water. He sensed it too, but he only lowered his voice so the words belonged first to her. You were never the stain on this ceremony. Clara looked up at the moon lantern. Its flame shone clean above every bowed head. No, she said softly. I was the one keeping it lit. The moon festival did not resume with music. It resumed with names. One by one, the servants who had stood along the courtyard edges were called forward under Crown protection, not as tray carriers, candle girls, kitchen hands, or quiet shadows, but as people whose memories mattered. Mara Ellison spoke first, her small voice shaking until Clara touched her shoulder and the tremor softened. Mrs. Rowe gave over the candle hall keys and the old maintenance book, where Clara's careful notes showed every wick trimmed, every lantern checked, every flame kept safe for weeks. Thomas Reed signed his statement beside the gate log, and when his hand shook, a northern guard gave him time instead of warning. Clara watched it all beneath the moon lantern, still wearing her old cream servant dress, pale gray apron, and worn brown shoes, yet feeling as if the floor under her had finally learned her weight. Lady Vanessa Hale and Lord Edmund Vale were escorted to separate rooms for questioning, not dragged through shame, not mocked by the crowd, but held by the same law they had believed would never turn toward them. That almost hurt more to witness, because justice did not need to become cruelty to be strong. King Adrian Blackthorne stood near the sealed records while the silver light traced the edges of his blackened silver armor. He looked every inch the northern king the stories had promised, cold, powerful, impossible to ignore. But when he turned to Clara, the coldness eased into something quieter, something careful enough to wait. You are under Crown protection tonight, he said. So are those who spoke for the truth. Your housing, wages, and safety will be secured before sunrise. Clara looked toward the servant wing, where the narrow windows glowed faintly above the kitchen roof. It was the only home she had known for years, and still, it had never truly belonged to her. And after tonight? She asked. Adrian's silver eyes held hers. The unseen bond stirred between them like moonlight touching water, moonflower and cedar rain, warm bread and candle smoke, a promise written in the air but not placed around her throat. After tonight, you choose, he said. The bond one sense does not own your road. It only tells me I should protect your right to walk it. Clara swallowed past the ache in her chest. Around them, Moonhall Pack watched without laughter now. Some looked ashamed. Some looked afraid. Some looked as if they were seeing the servant courtyard for the first time and realizing how many lives had been hidden in plain sight. Adrian stepped back and offered his hand again, palm open, waiting as he had before. Not to lift her from the ground this time, but to invite her from the place where they had tried to leave her. Clara looked at his hand, then at the moon lantern burning clean above them. She thought of all the nights she had trimmed its flame while noble families prayed beneath its light without ever knowing her name. Then she placed her hand in his by choice. Together, they walked down the royal path, not as possession, not as spectacle, but as witness and king moving through a silence too honest to break. At the end of the courtyard, Adrian ordered the Moon Hall ledgers, offering records, and servant duty books sent north for full review. Every oath tied to the festival would be reopened. Every servant punishment linked to false records would be examined. Clara paused at the gate and looked back once. The stone where she had fallen still held a faint mark of spilled wax, pale beneath the moon. She did not hate it. It had become the place where the truth first touched the ground. Adrian stood beside her, leaving space for her breath, her fear, and her future. They wanted you unseen, he said quietly. Clara looked toward the road beyond Moon Hall, where northern banners waited under the stars. Then let them remember what they saw. And beneath the full moon, the servant Omega who had kept the light alive walked forward with her name restored, while every hidden lie in Moon Hall began to tremble behind her.